Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
All the religions of the world look into the universe and see there's something beyond what we hear, beyond what we see.
If you say that you love God, whom you don't see, but you hate your brother or your neighbor, whom you see, then I cannot believe that you love God.
So it means that when you see someone, do not see him first as a Christian or Jew or Hindu or Buddhist. See him or her as a human being.
If you fall into the trap of thinking that you have a corner on truth, and you forget that the golden rule is in all of the other world's religions, it's not going to work.
We all should try to understand what all religions are teaching and to show how much they overlap, how much they share, especially when it comes to the golden rule.
All these different religions in the world are actually impressions of one unfolding divine plan that are being revealed gradually to humanity.
זאת התמונה של אהבה מול שנאה, להרבות אהבה. ואני חוזר ואומר, הדבר הזה אפשרי. הוא לא רק אפשרי, הוא חובה, הוא מצווה.
It is not incumbent upon God, it is not incumbent on all of humanity. It is incumbent upon you, the single person, the single voice that has the capacity to create love, that has the capacity to create good, that has the capacity to create that which is right and just.
Ini yang mesti kita ingat kalau kita ingin memperbaiki dunia ini secara sungguh-sungguh. Bad conduct, bad behavior yang terdapat di masyarakat itu kita yang bertanggung jawab. Kita harus mempertanggungjawabkan.
So at the end of the day, whatever the faith that you follow, whatever the religion that you believe in, we have a common ground.
That is what makes all religions brothers, sisters. We need to implant love, the love of good deeds, the love of the golden rule in the hearts and minds of these children or of our children as they grow up.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show. Today, bringing you another really fascinating guest involved in creating a better tomorrow. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Cheryl Halpern, who is a director, a producer, a documentarian, co-founder and partner of HQ Creative, an Emmy Award-winning production company and branding agency that serves clients around the world. And Ms. Halpern has a very long record of public service in broadcasting and education, international affairs. She was nominated to serve on the boards of America's national and international broadcasting organizations by three presidents, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and George W. Bush. She was confirmed in 1990 as a member of the Board for International Broadcasting and as director of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. From 1995 to 2002, she served on the Broadcasting Board of Governors, overseeing Voice of America, Radio and TV Marti, as well as Worldnet, Worldnet, Radio Free Asia, and Radio Free Iraq. And then in 2002 was confirmed to serve as the director for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, and subsequently was reelected by her peers of chairman for that two-term limit. And in addition, Ms. Halpern was also public delegate to the United States with the rank of ambassador to the 63rd session of the General Assembly of the United Nations during the Obama administration. She had been a member of the United States Holocaust Memorial Council, numerous other activities, which we will put in the bio of the show. But we really want to talk to her. Really interesting themes we're going to be getting into today. But Cheryl Halpern, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Well, thank you for the invitation to join you.
It's great having you. These are themes that we don't normally get into today, but I'm really looking forward to talking to you. And as we typically do, I love to start things off by handing things over to you for a little bit, just to talk and sort of reintroduce yourself beyond what I mentioned. I mean, I would love to hear a little bit more of the background story that takes us up to, I guess, when the president called you and said, "Hey, Cheryl, we have a position that we want to put you in the Corporation of Public Broadcasting." But we'd love to hear a little bit more about the background story.
Oh, a little bit about the background story. Who I am is really a reflection of the home I grew up in. My parents, my father was a rabbi, and my mother, his co-producer with regard to community relations and congregational relations. And I learned from the start that everybody, regardless of age, needs to have a seat at the table and be heard. And I was given that respect. So it didn't matter who came into our home, didn't matter what their ethnicity was, what their faith was, whether they were the brightest of the bunch or otherwise with special needs. Respect and dignity was given to all. And that was the foundation of the Golden Rule, which is the commonality. It's the value with commonality in every faith. Do unto others as you want to have done to yourself. And conversely, don't do to another what you would not have done to yourself. And so throughout the course of my life, with every opportunity that has been presented to me, I have focused on promoting tolerance, respect, and dignity, which I think in part accounts for the recognition by others, including the presidents, to be a communicator, a storyteller, an engager around the world.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to talking about the Golden Rule and the current documentary, but I would love to set the stage, I would say, because you've done a lot more, in your transformation from sort of the broadcasting field. You became a filmmaker, a director, a producer, and you've been doing a lot. And when we're talking about some of these themes, like inclusion, like tolerance, would love to talk about just a couple of your previous projects that stood out to me as just really resonating with these themes. One which I believe was entitled Wishmakers. It focused on a really interesting kibbutz-like community in Israel called Kfar Tikva, that's focused on adults with cognitive, developmental, emotional disabilities. Could you talk a little bit about this project as one of the examples of what you've been working on over the years?
Certainly. And it goes back to doors opening, meeting people, listening. So a friend of mine who is the proprietor of a wine and liquor store in Jerusalem, when I approached him, I said, "Can you recommend a appropriate wine for me to bring to a friend who lives in Jerusalem as a dinner gift?" And he said, "Cheryl, I need to introduce you to the Tulip Winery and the Wishmaker wine." And he went and he proceeded to say, "Take this to your friend. She's going to enjoy it. You're going to enjoy it." take the bottle, we open it at dinner, and I come back to him the next day and I say, Avi Ben, this wine was really, really good. I'd like to buy some more and even have it, sent to the United States. He said, Cheryl, I need to give you a little bit more information about the Wishmaker wine. And he started to tell me about the Tulip Winery that is located in this residential special needs community called Kfar Tikva. And I was intrigued. I was intrigued about who would choose to put a winery there and engage with people with special needs. So I asked him, do you have the number of the, management, the manager, fellow by the name of Roe? He said, sure, we're good friends. I'm going to call him. He calls Roe, and I take the phone and I say, I'm here in Jerusalem. I'm intrigued. Can I come visit? And he says, certainly come and visit. Well, when are you going to be at the winery? He says, I'm there every day. I said, great. I'm coming up tomorrow. See you at 2:00. So another friend of mine drives me up to the winery and I meet the people involved. There's a individual who is older, who is like a co-manager. And he says, this is my home. This is my pride. And in fact, the individuals, regardless of their capacity, I learn are contracted for, and they are paid accordingly. And they do take pride in being able to produce something that is then commercially sold. And then I say, okay, Roe, tell me more about Wishmaker. What is the background to that wine as opposed to all of the other tulip wines? And he says, together with the people working at the winery with special needs, the question was asked, how do we do something to give back to others? How do we do something to yet improve and give a sense of happiness, inclusion to those that are even less advantaged than the special needs people at the winery? And they came up with this concept collectively to create a wine called the Wishmaker, where the profit would go to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And the Make-A-Wish Foundation is focused on providing the fulfillment of wishes for children who are really fighting terminal illness. And I cried. It brought tears to me. And I said, you know what? This is a compelling story that has to be shared about how doing for others is not limited to wealth. It's not limited to age. It's not limited to education. What defines doing for others is from the heart. And in the Hebrew, since we're talking about a winery in Israel, the tagline of the winery in both Hebrew and in English is the line that the wine that loves people. And that really is the truth about it.
Beautiful. Really beautiful.
It really is. And I must tell you, when this particular documentary has aired in countries around the world, many of the ambassadors and ambassadorial wives from these countries have all taken a trip up to visit the Tulip Winery and Kfar Tikva, which translates as the Village of Hope.
So, and again, I guess this comes back to, well, I mean, there's themes here of, as we'll be getting into the Golden Rule in a minute, but sort of these themes of connecting different religions and sort of, finding the similarities. You worked in Ethiopia. You did, several documentaries. Again, talking about your connections and meeting people. I know the First Lady of Ethiopia was involved in a few of these, but one of your movies was entitled "Two Zions: Living Legacy of Queen of Sheba and King Solomon." And here, you talk about sort of the connections between Jews and Ethiopian Orthodox Christians. And I would love, well, if you could. Again, if you could talk a little bit of background story of, how you became friends with the First Lady of Ethiopia, but also I think this is introducing a couple themes in terms of the connections that resonate between these two groups and where we're going to be going when we get to the Golden Rule.
Well, I do believe that there's a degree of destiny involved in everyday life, who we meet, who we choose to stay connected with, the opportunities that you never anticipate that suddenly emerge. And with regard to the First Lady of Ethiopia at that moment in time, there was a dinner that was honoring the president of Liberia, who was a woman, Helen Johnson Sirleaf, and Laura Bush, First Lady of the United States at that time. And I, as a member of the board of the International Republican Institute that was hosting the event, had a table that I was looking forward to fill with friends, colleagues, associates. And I invited a friend. His name is Dr. Ephraim Isaac, who was the executive director of the Institute of Semitic Studies at Princeton University. Ephraim's ethnicity, based on his parentage, is both Ethiopian and Yemenite. So I said, come on, you'll find it an interesting engagement. He said, love to come. Get a call from Ephraim. And he said, Cheryl, can I bring a friend? I said, who do you want to bring? Well, the ambassador of Ethiopia to the United States, Sammy Asifa, I'd like to bring him. And I said, certainly, I'm more than happy to see him at my table with you. Next day, I get a call. Cheryl, we've never met, but my name is Sammy, and we've got a good friend with Ephraim Isaac. I said, is this maybe Ambassador Sammy? And he said, yes. He said, can I bring a friend? Well, I say, we do have to satisfy Secret Service because of the First Lady's attendance. Who do you want to bring? He said, well, I'd like to bring the First Lady of Ethiopia. Really? Wonderful. Be my pleasure. So her name, Azeb Mesfin. And Azeb comes with Sammy and Ephraim. And at this point in time, I have a particularly good relationship with Laura Bush. And during the course of the evening, I bring Azeb over to meet Laura, introduce First Lady to First Lady. The end of the evening, Azeb says to me, you realize I want to reciprocate your gracious hospitality. And Ethiopia at that moment in time was just not on my radar screen for traveling. And I made a quip saying, well, on one of Dr. Isaac's visits to Ethiopia, I will join him. Well, he goes frequently. And every time Ephraim was going, I would be getting a call from Sammy. Are you going, Cheryl? Are you going? One time I get a call from Sammy. I am in Israel with my son, Alex. Get a call. So I turn to my son. I say, hey, we're about 4 hours flying time away from Addis. Can we go to Ethiopia now together? He says, sure, Mom. We take the flight to Ethiopia, where we are hosted by the First Lady, her husband, the Prime Minister, and because my son is with me as well, and her children are living with them as well, this unique family bond is created. And till today, this unique family bond continues. But having that relationship enabled both the two Zions and the Khanda Bodhi about traditional whipping, other documentaries that both she, as First Lady, and I found to be compelling to be produced.
Beautiful story, and we'll of course put the links to this extensive bibliography of movies that you put together. But no, it's extremely impressive, Cheryl. And again, I wanted to lay the groundwork there, but I'd love to get into the Golden Rule now. That's the current film titled "The Golden Rule: Do Unto Others." Exploring the Golden Rule, the ethic of reciprocity, across these various religious traditions. Give us a little bit of the background here and a little bit of how sort of the ideas for this got gestated.
When I was doing the documentaries, the first one in Ethiopia called Natsanet, which is the story of young women who challenged cultural norms to fight for gender equality, I made a decision to submit that documentary to an Indonesian film festival. And lo and behold, it won Best Documentary at the film festival. And the ceremony was taking place in Jakarta. And I was invited to be there to be celebrated together with the film. It's the first time I flew into Indonesia, and I met the film festival producer, a man by the name of Damien Dimatra, and his wife, Verda. Damien was an author, film producer in his own right, Verda, an actress in her own right, and their children, Natasha, with whom I have subsequently produced and directed documentaries, and her two younger siblings, Azriel, who was a little boy, very little boy, maybe a 3-year-old at the time that I had submitted this film. And now there's the addition of Misha, another child who was born since I became involved. And I spent a good portion of the time at the film festival on the floor, running around with little AZ and being with his mother as well. And I became Granny Cheryl. So there was, again, a family relationship that developed between myself and the Dimatra family. In 2016, you had several suicide bombings take place in Indonesia, where children were in fact wearing the suicide bomb vest, going into churches and blowing themselves up during a service. AZ, my Indonesian grandson, said, Granny, I'm afraid because the Dimatras are Christians. And even though Indonesia is the largest Muslim populated country in the world, it has all these other faiths represented. It's not a single landmass. It's 6,000 inhabited islands out of a 17,000 island archipelago. And certainly on the island of Java, where Jakarta is located, you have a primarily Muslim population. If you go to Bali, you have a Hindu majority. So the demographics of each island do change. And here I'm listening to Israel saying he's afraid to either go to church, go to school. What's going to be happening? That there's this faith-driven violence that is being experienced. So his parents and I, we kind of brainstormed, how do we teach, how do we counterbalance the focus of the extremism that was being introduced into Indonesia? And we came up with a concept called the Visions of Peace Initiative. And we went to the NU and the Muhammadiyah. Those are the two largest Muslim social organizations in the Republic, which have more than 150 million members. They agreed that there needs to be a method to challenge what was being exported from Iran into Indonesia that was promoting extremism. So we came up with this program where we would listen to the children aged 5 to 18 and let them first express their fears. What are their concerns? Because the concern of a 5-year-old is going to be very different than the concern of a 16-year-old. And teach them the golden rule. Because the golden rule is a universal value that is in every faith, be it the Abrahamic faith, the Asian faiths, collectively. But more importantly, in our early stages, there is a motto in Indonesia, which goes back to the 1400s. So regardless of whether it was the kingdom of monarchies, whether it was the Dutch colony, or today as the Republic, and this motto is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which translates with unity with diversity. It is an acknowledgement of the diversity of Indonesia across the board, ethnically, with faith, different dialects, but there has to be unity. So the young people responded very favorably to this notion. And after we would engage with them, we said, now, use any art modality you choose. Draw, film, sing, dance, play the guitar, write me a poem, but express your vision of a peaceful tomorrow. And I've got to tell you, it is incredible what these young people chose and how they chose to express themselves. And they were pretty candid with their feelings. When a 14-year-old says, you've now helped me to come to be at peace with myself. Now I can try to be at peace with others. To me, that's the lesson that youth around the world really need to learn. And that's the golden rule. So to date, we have been with more than approaching 500,000 Indonesian children. And I shouldn't call them all children, Indonesian youth, the Pemuda, the vanguard of the future, both for Indonesia. But if we start looking at every country, it really is the future that needs to be embraced and engaged.
In together, obviously concepts from Judaism of, we have our children, the stewards of the world. We have the principle of Tikkun Olam and healing the world. I love where you're going with all this. Any interesting stories? I know you had various clergy members involved, from Hindu priests to imams in New York City to archbishops in Jerusalem. Any interesting stories, anecdotes along the way as you were putting together this amazing roster of folks to talk about these themes that you could share with us while we have you today?
What is inspiring is that as I and Natasha, our camera crews, met with the different clergy, both male and female, they echoed the same sentiments. It didn't matter if they were from the Baha'i or the Armenian Church or the Hindu high priest in Bali, or, as you reflected, the imam in New York City, the rabbi in Israel, or the community leader from the congregation KJ, Kilat Jeshurun, in New York. They are all expressing the same sentiment, because in every faith, you can change the manner in which the sentence is written, but the context is the same. We have to remember, think before you speak, think before you do, and do unto another what you or how you yourself would want to be treated. And when we deviate from that, when you do to another what you wouldn't want to be done to yourself, you're not following in the footsteps, in the manner in which the divine, however you choose to call the divine, would have you behave. And I think that's, when I met with the Armenian chancellor, and we reflected on the genocide that took place among the Armenians at the turn of the 20th century, and how his grandparents, lived through this, and his parents. He was saying, you, Cheryl, remember the Holocaust. Well, what happened in Armenia was almost like a precedent for what was then going to be forthcoming later in the 20th century. He says, God never told anybody to kill in the name of the Almighty. That is something we humans do to one another. But going back, he said, Cheryl, go back to the days of Noah and the ark. One family was on that ark. One family got off that ark. We are all cousins. And there were 7 commandments, way before the 10 commandments, that were given to Noah and his family. Thou shalt not kill was one of them. And he said, we're not living by the tenets, by the faith that we as humans have chosen to follow. And that sentiment was really echoed by everyone. You know, violence is a decision we are making, we are taking to do. It is not a commandment from the Almighty.
My great uncle was a historian writer by the name of Louis Fisher, who is best known for the time he spent living with Gandhi on his ashram in the 1940s and written a series of books about him. Gandhi, used the golden rule quite often in his writings. He also had, a very important philosophy that, small actions, can lead to rather dramatic change. I would love to see sort of what's next. Obviously, the documentary is making its way through Indonesia. Clearly, this is a theme for where we are in 2024 that really has to get out there in a major way. What's next? I mean, what's happening next with the Golden Rule? Where is distribution? Take us into. I'm speaking out of turn here because broadcasting. But what's happening next? Because this is clearly a message, and hopefully, we can lead to revolutionary uptake of this message. Something that's really important in 2024 with where we are.
Well, the world is a very large place, and in order to make a difference, you have to focus. And you go country by country with your focus in order to truly make a difference. So we determined, and I say we, Natasha and I, together with Alex Stolchenko, we made a decision to launch the documentary on the island of Bali to recognize the Hinduism and the Asian faith, because, again, in Indonesia, we felt there needed to be a greater awareness on the other islands of the diversity that exists in the Republic. And also to expose Indonesians to the diversity of faith represented in the documentary as expressed by the rabbinic, the Jewish clergy, the Baha'i clergy, the Christian clergy, because you typically do not see that sort of interfaith presentation on camera, on the screen. You're not going to necessarily see it if you're watching the television in Indonesia or listen to the radio in Indonesia, or even going to the different public or certainly public schools. Private schools are clearly going to be focused in a particular faith-based doctrine. So you have to provide the opportunity for creating an awareness of one another if we're going to respect one another. If you don't know, ignorance is a manipulative tool.
Yeah.
It is used all too frequently. And social media networks, unfortunately, perpetuate the manipulation with misinformation, disinformation. So we decided to focus first in Indonesia. And the Visions of Peace initiative, as the executive producer of this, was able to open doors. Once the launch took place in Bali, with an interfaith roundtable afterwards, we were invited to do a screening at the Indonesian Parliament House. That was a first for any film. Then, again, Indonesia was in the process of an electoral campaign for president and vice president. The vice president-elect, who was the mayor of Surakarta, was so taken with the documentary that he established a week of tolerance in recognition of the documentary, and 25 screenings took place in his city of Surakarta to children, to youth, high school and college. You can't just run through and screen without follow-up. You need to continue to talk, to engage, which is part of this long-winded answer to your question. Why aren't we doing more, or what are the next steps? Everything has to be measured. You need to take steps that can provide a tangible recognition for change. So you do the screenings, you celebrate peace, you get on the local media, and I will say that Television Indonesia, CNN Indonesia, all have taken the interest in the documentary. And we are getting so many requests from schools, from the different islands, to take the time to be with the youth, work through their fears, through the Visions of Peace Initiative programs. Mm-hmm. And the documentary and the Visions of Peace programs really go hand in hand, because they're reaffirming tolerance. And that's what has to be done. Give you an example. After a screening in Surakarta, there was a young woman who came over wearing a hijab. And she said, I don't know how to respond when she's in a Muslim school, but there are the more, I'm going to say, liberal-minded Muslim girls who were making fun of her. And we, together with Natasha, discussed how there has to be dialogue. You can't just yell at each other, don't scream at each other, but talk to each other. Why you are choosing to wear this, why they choose not to, but respect each other accordingly, because Allah loves you both. And, again, young people have to learn that however one chooses to observe, it's your personal expression, and you need not be judgmental and critical of another who chooses to observe differently, if they choose to even observe at all. So we will move forward, but everything has got to be measured and time determined. Right. Looking in the United States now, look at, the FBI says that crime has gone down in the United States, with the exception of youth crime, which has risen. So how can we teach tolerance, civility? How do we bring it back into the American school system? I can't give you a quick answer. I can only say that when I went to school, and I'm not giving away my age here, but going back a number of decades, we did have civility. It was taught in school. And we need to bring it back. And if you watch the documentary, there's actually a black and white clip of a teacher putting on a blackboard, which again dates it since it's not the whiteboard, do unto others. And the 3 girls who we just stopped spontaneously on a street and asked if they knew of the Golden Rule. 2 did not. 1 learned from her mother. But the 3 of them then say, we need to teach the Golden Rule in school. We've got to get back to basics.
Wonderful. So at this part of the episode, we are now going to segue to another guest, a surprise guest we have with us today, and have the honor of being joined by Her Royal Majesty Queen Angelique-Monet, Queen Consort of Etioni, Osun State, Nigeria, who's also president of the Etioni Development Group and founder of the Royal Cocoa Film Festivals, which also take place in Nigeria. And for those that follow our show and have listened the last couple of years, you will know that last year we profiled His Royal Majesty Obadukun Thompson, Edioni Osun, and his strategies for revitalizing the cocoa value chain in Nigeria. Her Royal Majesty is an American-born, award-winning multimedia talent. She's a philanthropist, a humanitarian, and is really focused on using the arts, particularly film, to help spread the world peace and tolerance message with Her Royal Majesty's United Nations Group AFI World Peace Initiative. She's also the owner of the award-winning United States-based Greta Joan Entertainment, a film distribution, marketing, and production arm. And in addition to all that, you may know that she's also a critically acclaimed ventriloquist, stage actress, recently was featured at Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which actually incorporated information about the Golden Rule release and movie. And we're excited to have her with us today to talk a little bit about what's going on with the distribution of this film on many different fronts. Her Royal Majesty and Queen Angelique-Monet, thank you for joining us as well today.
Yes, it's a pleasure to see you, and thank you so much for having us with you.
It's wonderful having you as well. Would really just love to turn things over to you at this point. Cheryl and I have been discussing the film and what's been going on down in Indonesia, but tell us about the strategy and the plans to take this extremely important message global.
Well, we're very excited about the film. Cheryl Halpern is an amazing lady doing amazing global initiatives. We've been together for over a decade, working for peace through her films. And originally, she started out winning our awards, being part of our events through the initiative that we do. Now on our board, the AFI World Peace Initiative, we host events together for women at the United Nations. We just had the dinner last year at the breakfast last year at UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly, where we promoted women and what we're doing. So this particular film is an amazing film because, first of all, it's relevant to the times that we're in, the Golden Rule. It's a simple principle, and I'm really excited about the principle and that it teaches us all how we can unite and how we can just get along with world peace and tolerance. So our organization took on the film to spread the awareness of the film. Now, that was also globally outside of what Princess did in Indonesia, okay? But now for a commercial viable product, we actually have the film. It's actually releasing in LA and Hollywood right now. And we've gotten amazing feedback with the film. And we're really excited that Greta Joanne Entertainment is taking the commercial arm of the film. So after our theatrical release, we're going to be going to digital streaming platforms, universities, schools, colleges, to make the film available to the global marketplace. And we're also in for your consideration for the Oscar short film doc as well. And we're really excited about that.
Outstanding. Outstanding. It's just, again, another important piece of this story. And as you were mentioning, just getting an extremely important message for where we are in 24 out to the public and around the globe. So it's great to see that you're involved in this.
Yes, it's really important because, our company takes pride in working with commercial products that actually have a message. And with documentary filmmaking, we're now in an era where people want to see real films specific to documentaries. Maybe 10 years ago, but where we're at now, it's definitely relevant. And we just want people to be kind and treat others how you'd want to be treated. And we've proven that since humanity, this has existed. And it's really not hard to do. It's just that we need to make sure that others really know that it exists. So bringing on the U.S. premiere and taking on the U.S. marketplace specific to Hollywood. And we're going to be hosting also one-off events in New York, Hollywood, London, as well, and major commercial marketplaces. That's going to really add a lot of value. And we're even going into the school system to work with children to learn more about the Golden Rule.
Great to see that you're involved in it, and great to see that you're going to be championing this forward. So very exciting, and appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you. And we're also screening the film at the Royal Coco International Film Festivals that's coming up in Lagos, that's co-founded by your dear friend and myself, His Majesty the Alonia Vetioni Obatakun Thompson, who's now taken a big role in the arts. And so that makes me really happy because that's been my passion, using film and the arts and performance in order to make world peace. And so since that, I've been in Nigeria and we're doing a lot of global work. We're very much appreciative to the work and to the support that His Majesty has also given us to champion these things forward.
It's a beautiful message. Hopefully we can do all that we can do on our end to help you spread this message, increase awareness of the film and the message. But really, Cheryl, an awesome story and an awesome journey you've been on to get where you're going, what you're doing now. Again, for everybody that is going to be listening to this episode of our show across the various podcast networks, or who'll be watching on the YouTube channel, again, you've been spending time with Cheryl Halpern, director, producer, documentarian extraordinaire. The name of the new film, The Golden Rule, Do Unto Others, doing really amazing things to educate the next generation, to reject intolerance, to reject disunity, to reject extremism, and come back to basics with the Golden Rule. Cheryl, I want to obviously thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us for a little while about everything that you've been up to, what you're doing now. Obviously, thank you for what you do. It's the right time for it. And as we like to say on our show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow for everybody via what you're doing. A really awesome story, and it was really great having you.
Thank you again for giving me the opportunity. It's a pleasure and a privilege.